What's going on, guys? This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Oakridge Ford. It is Sunday, April 5th, 2020. I'm Norm, along with Mike. Thanks for being with us. Mike, how are you?
Good morning, Norm. I'm well. Thankful that Sportsnet actually showed a classic game last night that the Leafs actually won. After seeing 2013 Game 7 more than a few times on NHL Network and on NBCSN in the States, I didn't get a chance to see it because it was geo-blocked, but apparently they showed a victory in the 2002 series against Ottawa. So I'm sure Leaf fans enjoyed seeing their team coming on the winning side rather than the losing side.
So many retrospectives, so many classics, so many tragedies that we are watching from the past as we essentially put a pause on where we are going collectively as an entire society, not just sports fans. Mike wants more good Maple Leaf moments to enjoy in these interesting and uncertain times. The thing is, Mike, how many good moments have the Leafs created for us between now and 1967?
No, I mean, I don't know whether the full video of the Game 7 in '78 when Lanny McDonald scored in overtime against the Islanders is available, but I could do with seeing Nicky Borashevsky's overtime goal in Game 7 in '93, or the Game 7 thrashing against the Blues, or Game 5 against the Kings when they took a 3-2 lead with Glenn Anderson's overtime goal, or anything from '99 or 2002 when they went to the conference finals both times. Something like that. It's just, I mean, every time we see friggin' Wayne Gretzky scoring in Game 7 against the Kings, and the pain of watching the 4-1 comeback against the Bruins. So I think I'm speaking for a lot of Leaf fans. Just, I know there's a lot of misery over the last 53 years, but there are some good points. So how about seeing a few of those?
Yeah, going back, the Leaf moments that a lot of us would like to see, and for some of us relive, others see and enjoy for the very first time, just weren't captured with great quality. Trend Wave, Daryl Sittler's 10-point night, Feb 7th, 1976. That was right after your first marriage, Mike. The Leafs beating Boston 11-4, 10 points from Sittler. I'd love to watch that thing from start to finish. And I think they have aired that on Leafs TV. We need to see more of that. Lamb Knot, either one of the conference finals games against Buffalo or Carolina. This is 99 and 2001. We're asking you which classic Leafs moments you'd like to relive again. He said he was too young to remember the one against the Sabres. What do you remember of that?
I remember the fact that Dominic Hasek was hurt starting the series, and the Leafs lost to Dwayne Rollison, who was their backup. And the Sabres were not a great team. It was Hasek standing on his head and winning a lot of games 2-1. And I thought that was the missed opportunity. Now, granted, I didn't think the Leafs were going to be good enough to get that far, but they sort of were carried by Curtis Joseph in those playoffs, getting by, I think it was Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Yeah. But, it was a little bit of a surprise. And of course, I went to one of the games in Buffalo, and I think that was the game that unfortunately Rob Ray scored. And when Rob Ray scores, you know that the gods are against you. So they think they lost that series 4-1, and it was not a pleasant experience. 3 years later, though, and then the only game I would want to see from that series is the game that they won. In 2002, they did tie Game 6 late on a Sundin goal, but then I think it was Martin Jelena scored for Carolina, and they won that game, and they won that series in 6 games. And the turnaround in that series, though,
I like how you brush.
Yeah,
the turnaround. Brush Matt. It was they tied it late with a Sundin goal. That was gorgeous. Like 15 seconds left, they were about to lose the game. Sundin camped in front of that, puts it in. The guy scored so many big goals when the team needed the goals to not only put them ahead in a game, but it's essentially prolong their survival. Matt Sundin, man, I was so angry with that guy.
How did that game end up? He scored a meaningless goal because they lost. But no, But the turnaround in that series, though, if you remember, they were like injury riddled for all
Yeah.
that
But they
playoff. They
won the
beat the
first game. They
Islanders,
won the first game of that series, though, Mike. They won the first game in
right? And
Carolina.
then Quinn brought back everybody who was injured. I think Tucker. No, it wasn't Tucker. It was like Yerke Lume, Sundin, like all the injured players he brought back in one go,
They
and
lost three in a
they
row.
never recovered. Yeah, so that was, I mean, that was disastrous. But okay, let's not live in the past.
Well, that's really all we can do right now. Benny B, 93, Game 7, Toronto versus Detroit. Anything with
Mm-hmm.
Bob Cole and Harry Neal. Timberwolf, any playoff series with Dougie in the blue and white was magic.
If somebody on Twitter posted like an open question saying, take a picture of like basically a game where it was moments before the event that you didn't want to happen. And it was game 6 against the Kings where Gretzky standing in front of the net. And I think it was Luke Robitaille was passing from the corner. I took that picture and posted it because if Felix Potvin stops him, or if that power play was eliminated, Glenn Anderson took a stupid penalty with seconds left in regulation, and that's what led to the Gretzky overtime goal. And I'm not even recognizing the missed call on Doug Gilmour, but how would have the fates changed, because Wendell Clark scored a hat trick in that game, and I can just imagine what that team and how great that they were from first line to fourth line, what they would have done against the
Yeah.
Canadians and Patrick Waugh. That would have been a monumental series.
Yeah, but the Canadians had a horseshoe up their collective ass that year. What,
sure.
10 overtime wins or something like that? Ridiculous.
John LeClair scored, I think, 4 or 5 overtime goals. It was ridiculous.
Johnny LeClair.
And that was before he really established himself. He only did that after he got traded to Philadelphia. He was just sort of a role player for the
LeClair,
Canadians.
such a French-sounding name, although he won't go down in the annals of history among the great Montreal Canadiens. But he did get the job done when it counted the most. So we are counting down the days, weeks, months until hockey resumes, until we can get back to some sort of normalcy. The Maple Leafs are still doing business quietly. You can do a lot of this stuff remotely from your location. You can sign guys electronically. You can set things up organizationally.
Well, and thankfully the Leafs have been very, very good in terms of providing us in the media with some interviews. Kyle Dubas was interviewed last Tuesday, Morgan Riley on Thursday. And, unfortunately, the usual fodder with no games going on is asking Morgan Riley how life is with Tessa Virtue, or how his cooking skills, or what he's watching on TV. But with Dubas, obviously, he's talking about, what's going on with the club. And, he mentioned Nick Robertson, their top prospect, having the possibility of, getting a reasonable chance of making the team next year. And he's one of those tweeners where, he's got such a late birthday. He'll be 19 next year. He'll qualify for the World Junior for Team USA. But it would either be NHL or back to the OHL and the Peterborough Petes. He would not qualify because he's so young for the American Hockey League. And, he's scored 55 goals in junior. So would another year in junior really help him? But he's a great talent. So they're not going to limit his chances of making the Leafs if he proves he can handle it. Now, I think he needs to get stronger and a little more mature. And if that's the case, then, another year in junior will work. But Dubas talked about that, and talked about Alexander Barabanov, the KHL prospect, who it sounds like the front runners are the Leafs and the Arizona Coyotes. So he updated us on that. But during this week, Norm, they signed a bunch of players. One was a draft pick, Philip Kral, a defenseman who played really well in the WHL the last few years. They think he's a prospect. He got a 3-year entry-level deal. They re-signed one of their Marley players, Kristins Rubins, a big Latvian defenseman. I think he's 22 years old, to a 2-year deal. And if you follow what's going on, we've seen over the last few years what the Leafs are doing in terms of almost a baseball style of development, where they sign a lot of players to AHL contracts, and if they show improvement, then they sign them to NHL deals. They did it with Mason Marchment He was an AHL contract. They did it with Justin Hall a few years ago, and he's turned out to be a pretty good defenseman. They're doing it with Rubens, and I don't know if he'll ever make the NHL, but I think they're giving players an opportunity to sort of build on. And Rubens played a couple years with Medicine Hat and has improved to the point that they think he could, that he earned an NHL contract. And on the last 72 hours, they signed 4 players, and who knows if Gordy Green or Mark McCann or Jeremy McKenna are ever going to make the NHL. They're all on 2-year AHL deals. I'll tell you one though that I think could, and based on what I've heard from my buddy Russ Cohen, who is somebody who was really attuned to the NHL draft. A few years ago, Arizona drafted a kid named Noel Hoffenmeyer.
Mm-hmm.
He's from North York. Played for the Ottawa 67s. Very good offensive skill. Needed a little work on his skating. Needed a little work on his defense. From what I've read and what I've heard, he had done that, but he did not get signed by Arizona. He went back into the draft last year in Vancouver. Did not get drafted, which is unusual in these days for a defenseman with his skill. And the teams didn't take a shot on him in like the 6th round or something like that. He went back to Ottawa as an overager, had 82 points with the 67s, and the Leafs signed him to a 2-year AHL deal. I talked to Russ a couple of days ago when they signed him, and he said, I think Hoffenmeyer eventually can make the NHL. So will that happen? That's up to him, but he'll get the opportunity. And with the likelihood of Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren probably playing for the Leafs next year, there will be opportunities with the Marlies for players to step in. And those players, all the ones that I mentioned, were signed to AHL deals, not NHL deals. That means they don't count against the 50 contract
Gives
limit.
Kyle Dubas a lot of credit. The man is forward thinking. He's got a plan, and he's going to adapt to things that may change the course of the process. And in this circumstance, casting a wide net with financial might and with the prowess of the organization's ability for scouting.
They did it last summer. They signed a big winger out of North Bay named Justin Brazeau. I saw him at the rookie development camp. 6'6". Now his skating needed a lot of work, and they're I guess their philosophy was let's give him a year in the ECHL and with Newfoundland. Let's see what he does. He led them in goal scoring. He had 27 goals. He was second in scoring with 55 points. We'll see, if they do have a development camp this summer, how his skating has progressed. With his size, if he can get to the net, that's a guy that eventually could make the NHL. So these are, they have a developmental model that I don't think a lot of NHL teams want to, apply the resources that the Leafs have or are willing to do that. The Leafs do, and we've already seen the Trevor Moores and guys that they've signed from Europe like Borgman and Zaitsev and Kali Rosen. We've seen that they've all gotten to the NHL. Doesn't mean that they're going to be stars. You're probably not going to get stars, but they're all contributors, and they can be used as assets in trades, and they can also be used as depth in the organization, and that is a good thing.
Mike, thank you very much for filling us in on that. Great information. The Leafs are looking ahead, and so are you. Can you give us an idea of what you're hoping to create for the masses over the next few days?
Well, I'm going to write about, and I know it came out last week, but I'm going to write about the Hockey News' Future Watch that they released, I think it was in late March, when it had the Leafs ranked 23rd in terms of team prospects, and their highest prospect was Nick Robertson at 34. And the list was compiled and collated in late January when Rasmus Sandin was called up to the NHL, so he was excluded from the list. So, if you put Sandin in there, they were probably in the teens, which is in the middle of the pack. And I think it's just reflective of the fact that, they were the number one organization, I think, 3 years ago in terms of, talent, and that was including Marner and Kapanen and a few others. And most or all those players are playing in the NHL, so that's the reason why they sort of emptied the coffers, but they are refilling them. And I find it strange that the player who was leading the OHL in goals was ranked 34th, and then I think the only other listing in the top 100 was Timothy Liljegren, and he was in the 60s. I think the organization is a little better than they projected, and some of the players that they listed, after talking with other people who are, who rank scouts, thought that they were a little off. But I'll be writing about that and amongst other things this
Support
week.
Mike at hockeybuzz.com. Thank you very much for all of your contributions on the YouTube channel, in community. Tell your friends about what we are doing. We are with you for the long run because you are with us. For Mike, I'm Norm.